Jealous sister tried to stop my wedding by claiming my fiancé wants to escape with her. Ellie and I look alike despite the 3-year age gap. Not twins, but similar enough that strangers mistake us for each other. My sister used this to her advantage more than once. I got engaged to Jake after 6 years together. Good relationship, solid foundation. We lived together for 4 of those years, built a life, made plans. He proposed at dinner on my birthday. Nothing flashy, just us. I said yes without hesitation. Ellie showed her first sign of trouble at the engagement dinner. Everyone gathered at my favorite restaurant, Jake's parents, my dad and stepmom, Ellie. She showed up 30 minutes late, ordered multiple drinks, barely spoke except to make cutting remarks about marriage being a conventional trap. I brushed it off. Ellie just broke up with her latest boyfriend, relationship number 12 in 5 years. None lasted longer than 6 months. She started them fast, ended them faster. When I asked her to be my maid of honor 2 weeks later, she hesitated. No excitement, no happiness for me. Just reluctance. I pushed aside my disappointment. Ellie agreed eventually, but her heart wasn't in it. She attended planning meetings sporadically, contributed minimally, complained about costs constantly. The bachelorette weekend exposed the full problem. 5 of us at a lake house, me, Ellie, and 3 friends from college. Rebecca organized everything perfectly. Ellie ruined it systematically. She arrived late, disappeared for hours, drank excessively, picked fights. I confronted her the second night after everyone else went to bed. She just spat venom about my perfect life, my perfect wedding, my perfect everything. The bitterness in her voice shocked me. She walked away before I could process her words. Sunday morning, she left without warning. Just a note claiming a work emergency. On a Sunday, I didn't hear from her for 3 days. Called, texted, no response. Jake noticed my distraction, but I didn't explain. How could I voice my sister's sudden hatred without understanding it myself? Thursday night, 3 weeks before the wedding, the situation exploded. Jake worked late. I sat alone at home, finalizing seating charts. The doorbell rang at 8:42 p.m. Ellie stood there, disheveled and agitated. She pushed past me and stated flatly that I couldn't marry Jake, that he didn't love me. Not really. My body went cold. She continued, claiming she and Jake had been talking for months, since before the engagement, about them, about possibilities, about his doubts. I told her to get out. She insisted she wanted to help me, to prevent me from discovering this after the wedding when money was spent and legal documents signed. I demanded proof. She pulled out her phone, showed me text exchanges with Jake. Dozens of messages spanning months. His words expressing doubts about our engagement, about wanting to see her, about making mistakes. Some from before our engagement, some from last week. She claimed he visited her apartment when I worked late, that they never planned for this to happen, it just did. I called her a liar. She challenged me to call Jake, to ask where he was right now. When I tried, it went straight to voicemail. Twice. She suggested checking his location. I never tracked Jake's phone before, never needed to. But doubt had crept in. I opened our shared emergency app, found him at an address I didn't recognize. She identified it as a coffee shop near her apartment where he waited for her. Then she left, apologizing for hurting me but insisting I deserved the truth. I stood frozen in my suddenly silent apartment. Called Jake again. No answer. Texted asking his location. No response. I grabbed my keys and wallet. Every rational thought screamed to wait to process. I ignored them all. Pulled up the location again. Memorized the address. Drove there without registering the journey. I found a small coffee shop on a corner, still open despite the hour. Parked across the street, scanned through windows. There sat Jake, alone at a table with 2 cups, checking his watch. I walked in. His expression shifted from surprise to confusion to concern when he saw me. I looked pointedly at the second cup. He admitted waiting for someone. I said Ellie's name. He paled. I told him about her visit, the texts, her claims. He reached toward me. I stepped back. He insisted it wasn't what I thought. That he'd been meeting her secretly, yes. Texting her about doubts, yes. But not for the reasons I assumed. He claimed Ellie wasn't stable. That she'd been contacting him for months. Initially with innocent questions about the wedding, about me. Then something changed. I wanted to believe him. Wanted it desperately. I demanded his phone. He handed it over without hesitation. I found their message thread. Their conversation didn't match what she showed me. His messages were short, factual, frequently unanswered. Hers were leading, suggestive, manipulative. The timestamps aligned, but the content differed dramatically. His last message arranged tonight's meeting with a clear statement that whatever was happening needed to stop. She had edited the screenshots she showed me, deleted her provocative messages, altered his responses, created an entirely different narrative. Jake explained in rushed, hushed tones. Ellie started contacting him 6 months ago. Small things at first, questions about birthday gifts for me, wedding opinions, then late-night texts. Suggestions they meet alone. Hints about their connection. He ignored most, responded neutrally to others. Tried telling me twice but stopped, worried about ruining my relationship with my only sister without concrete proof of her intentions. Tonight, she texted claiming an emergency involving me. He agreed to meet, planned to confront her finally, tell her to stop. He'd turned off his phone during the client meeting earlier and forgot to turn it back on. I felt sick. Used. Manipulated by my own blood. The texts on his phone couldn't be faked. Thousands of messages. Consistent patterns. None of the damning statements she'd shown me. I left the coffee shop alone, ignoring Jake's plea to come home together. Drove to Ellie's apartment. Pounded on her door until she opened it, surprised to see me instead of Jake. I showed her the real text thread from his phone. Watched her face transform from confusion to anger to calculated coldness. She claimed he deleted messages, that I was naive, that he had us both fooled. I walked away. Spent the night in a hotel. Ignored calls from both of them. Needed space to think, to breathe, to decide what truth looked like. Morning came. I scrolled through years of memories with Ellie. A pattern emerged. Subtle competitiveness, small sabotages, boyfriends who looked remarkably like mine. Always taking, rarely giving. Always center stage, never supporting cast. The incident with my prom date 9 years ago. The job interview she, accidentally, made me miss. The endless backhanded compliments. I called my father. Asked about Ellie's childhood therapist, the one she saw after Mom died. He hesitated, then confirmed what I suspected. Borderline personality disorder diagnosis at 16. Treatment abandoned when she turned 18 and refused to continue. Family agreement not to discuss it, hoping she'd grown past it. Jake called again. I answered this time. He'd spent the night gathering proof. Security footage from his office showing Ellie visiting multiple times when I worked late. Emails she sent from created accounts pretending to be old girlfriends warning him about me. Screenshots she sent of our conversations that never happened. An obsession. A calculated attack on our relationship. A sickness I couldn't fix. The wedding remained on schedule. We changed all passwords, phone numbers, security settings. Hired guards specifically watching for her. She didn't show, but sent a 20-page letter to Jake's parents detailing our fabricated affair. They never mentioned it until after the ceremony, having recognized the handwriting from previous anonymous notes they'd received. 3 years passed. I've seen Ellie twice. Once at my father's hospital bed after his heart attack, once accidentally at a grocery store. She's dating a man who resembles Jake now. I warned him anonymously. He blocked my number. Sometimes I dream about the sister I thought I had. The one who wasn't consumed by jealousy, who could celebrate my happiness. I wake up and remember the sister who actually exists. The one who almost destroyed everything. I check my locks twice each night now. 1 month after the wedding, Ellie resurfaced. A series of emails hit everyone in my family, Jake's parents, our mutual friends. Screenshots of conversations between us that never happened. Photos of Jake entering her apartment building. Security footage timestamps conveniently cropped out. A narrative so carefully constructed it almost seemed plausible if you didn't know the truth. I changed my email address 3 times. She found each one. I blocked her number. She used burner phones. I locked down social media. She created fake accounts to contact my friends. A digital stalker leaving fingerprints everywhere. Jake and I considered a restraining order. Consulted a lawyer who explained the difficulty of proving harassment without direct threats. Ellie operated in gray areas, always implying, never explicitly threatening. The lawyer suggested documentation, police reports, building a case. We started a file. It grew thick fast. Then she disappeared again. 2 months of silence. I slept through the night for the first time since the wedding. Started therapy to process the betrayal. Began looking at houses outside the city. Considered jobs in other states. Planned a future without looking over my shoulder. Until the package arrived at Jake's office. A small box containing a positive pregnancy test and a handwritten note claiming the expected date of birth aligned with a business trip Jake took 6 months ago. His assistant opened it, saw the contents, told the entire department before he returned from court. Office gossip spread like wildfire. His boss called him in for a conversation about judgment. Clients asked to work with different attorneys. Jake came home early that day. I found him sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. The story spilled out in fragments. Accusations. Whispers. Disapproving looks. Professional reputation damaged in hours. Months or years to rebuild trust. I called the police finally. Filed the report we should have filed months earlier. The officer took notes, expressed sympathy, promised to contact Ellie. A wellness check disguised as an investigation. They'd found her apartment empty. Neighbors hadn't seen her in weeks. We hired a private investigator. Discovered she'd moved to Chicago, taken a job similar to mine, but at a larger company, higher salary. Started dating a lawyer at a firm competing with Jake's. The PI suggested we stop looking, stop giving her attention, stop feeding whatever drove her. We followed his advice. Changed our numbers one last time. Moved to a secure building with doormen who checked IDs. Created new email addresses known only to trusted inner circle. 6 more months passed. Normalcy crept back gradually. We bought the house, adopted a dog, planned for children. Jake's career recovered slowly. My promotion came through. We developed code words to ask if the other felt safe without alerting anyone listening. Then my father called. Ellie had shown up at his house, disoriented, claiming people were following her, monitoring her. She'd lost her job, her apartment, her boyfriend. Needed a place to stay. Needed money. Needed help. He let her in, concerned by her deterioration. Called me the next morning. I drove there immediately. Found her sleeping in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by old photos of us. My father looked older, resigned. Admitted he enabled her too many times, ignored signs, hoped things would improve naturally. Now he recognized she needed professional intervention. asked for my help despite everything she'd done. The sister who tried to steal my life now needed me to salvage hers. Irony so bitter I almost laughed. I sat across from Ellie in the psychiatric hospital's visiting room. 3 months since her breakdown at our father's house. The court-ordered evaluation diagnosed borderline personality disorder, extreme narcissism, and delusional thinking. No surprise there. The surprise came when she agreed to inpatient treatment instead of fighting it. She looked smaller somehow. Hair pulled back, face without makeup, hospital-issued clothes hanging loose. No physical restraints, but heavily medicated. Eyes focused somewhere beyond me. The doctors advised against visiting. Said it might trigger episodes, disrupt progress. I came anyway. Needed to see for myself. Her therapist joined us briefly. Explained Ellie's condition would require lifelong management. That her obsession with me, with Jake, stemmed from childhood abandonment issues intensified after Mom's death. That she genuinely believed her own lies eventually. That she constructed an entire reality where Jake loved her, not me. Where she deserved my life more than I did. Ellie spoke little during the visit. Asked about our father. Asked if I hated her. Never asked about Jake. I answered honestly. Didn't offer forgiveness or condemnation. Just facts, boundaries, reality. The therapist nodded approvingly at my approach. Before leaving, Ellie handed me a sealed envelope. The therapist had reviewed it, approved its contents. Said giving it to me represented progress in her treatment. I waited until I reached my car to open it. Inside, a handwritten list. Every lie she told about me since childhood. Every sabotage attempt. Every manipulation. Dozens of entries spanning 20 years. The job interviews she deliberately gave me wrong times for. The boyfriends she seduced to test their loyalty. The rumors she spread through our social circles. The emails she sent to my college professors questioning my work. Everything culminating in her campaign to destroy my relationship with Jake. No apology accompanied the list. No explanation beyond what the therapist had already provided. Just acknowledgement. A catalog of destruction. I drove home in silence. Showed Jake the list that night. Watched his face move through shock, anger, disgust, and finally a profound sadness. We didn't speak about it afterward. Filed it with the rest of the documentation. Closed that chapter as best we could. 6 more months passed. Ellie remained in treatment, moved from inpatient to a supervised group home. Our father visited weekly. I sent cards on birthdays and holidays. Maintained distance while acknowledging her existence. The doctors reported steady improvement, medication compliance, reality acceptance. They used words like remission and managed condition rather than cured. Jake and I postponed having children. Needed time to rebuild security, trust, stability. Bought a house in another state. Changed jobs. Kept our new address from everyone except my father, who promised never to share it with Ellie. Started over in many ways. Last week, Ellie's therapist called. She completed the intensive treatment program. Maintained stability for 6 consecutive months. Secured a part-time job. Found an apartment with another program graduate. Requested permission to send me a letter directly. The therapist vetted it, assured me it contained nothing manipulative or triggering. Asked if I'd accept it. I agreed reluctantly. The letter arrived yesterday. 2 pages, straightforward language. No dramatic declarations or promises. An acknowledgement of harm caused. Recognition that trust was permanently damaged. Acceptance that relationships have consequences. A statement that she was working to build a life separate from mine, to find identity beyond being my sister or my shadow. No request to meet, visit, reconnect. Just information about her progress, her medication, her continued therapy. I read it 3 times. Looked for hidden meanings, manipulations, traps. Found none. Showed Jake, who studied it with the same suspicion. We agreed to file it without response. Not out of cruelty, but self-preservation. Some bridges stay burned. This morning, I submitted the final paperwork for our new identities. Legal name changes, fresh start, additional protection. The lawyer assured us the records would be sealed given the documented harassment. We'll move next month. Tell no one except my father, who understands the necessity. I don't hate Ellie anymore. Don't fear her as acutely. But I don't trust her recovery either. Mental illness doesn't vanish. Progress isn't linear. Medications get skipped. Therapy gets abandoned. Obsessions resurface. I've learned to live with permanent vigilance. Jake kissed me goodbye this morning, whispered that he loves me, that we survived, that we're stronger now. I believe him. We weathered a storm that should have destroyed us. But I keep an emergency bag packed in my closet anyway. Old habits. Survival instincts. Sometimes I dream about a different sister. One who celebrated my happiness instead of trying to steal it. One who visited for holidays without hidden agendas. One who existed outside the distorted mirror of mental illness. I wake up and remember the real Ellie. The one receiving treatment, taking medication, writing progress letters. The one I'll never fully trust again. I check my locks twice each night still.